What is the Shroud of Turin? And a couple other great questions that my guy is asking here. First, the Shroud of Turin. What do I think about the Shroud of Turin? It's fake, basically. It was Christian. It was middle time Christians attempt to create religious relics. So you have to understand the history during the time frame from like uh, 1000 BCE, 1000 CE, up until really the current time frame. People like having religious relics in order for them to prove their religion. And the Shroud of Turin is one of those things. When you even look at the Shroud of Turin, you can see that it is the basic long-haired European Jesus, the one that you've seen them already painting. If they wanted to actually make something that was more realistic, it would have looked like a Middle Eastern man, even of their era, which for them would have looked like a Muslim in the Ottoman Empire. And, they just wasn't going to have that kind of thing, especially during that time frame. The Turks and the Ottomans were very much against Christian Europeans, so that would have been a problem. But it's a fake. The material has been dated back to the 1200s and 1300s CE, so you don't have it's not back far enough, basically. Right now, do I think he existed? Absolutely not. Not in the sense of the Bible version of Jesus. Did Josephus write about 4 different Jesus people running around, 4 different people called Yeshua running around saying that they were the Messiah? Yes. Were there others people running around saying they were the Jewish Messiah? Yes. These people have been collaborated into the one, and the Flavianus Testimonia has been proven to be a forgery, which was added to Josephus's work. So we know that that portion of his writing is also falsified. The fact that other people like Tacitus and Pliny wrote about Jesus, they didn't write about Jesus. They wrote about people's belief in a Jesus. So in no way does this verify the biblical character of Jesus as far as the Son of God, healing people Messiah. But people believed it back then, just like they do today. But as far as that Jesus, miracle Jesus, no, I don't believe it existed. And so the last part, the next part doesn't, I already answered that. So do I think he played with corruption or that humans just corrupted it? He didn't have nothing to do with it. The Flavians created the biblical Jesus version in order to create a new version of Judaism, a subdued version of Judaism. Understand that Judaism was one of the greatest threats of the Roman Empire during that time frame, mainly because there were 1/3 of the city of Alexandria in Egypt was Jewish, and they were looking for a messianic Messiah that was going to overthrow or free them from the Roman government, put it that way, free them from the Roman government. The area of the Levant, Megiddo, Jericho, Jerusalem, all that area was very important to trading with the East. And so if they overthrew, and not just trading, but also military routes, military movement, if they overthrew the Romans, that would be a problem with their with more farther east empire and their trade routes and their money. So the Jewish revolts of a Messiah that was going to come back and take them out of the Roman Empire was a very dangerous thing. So they had to get rid of that idea of a Jewish Messiah who was going to overthrow the Romans. Uh, so have I ever read the Gospel of Judas? I read it about 20 years ago, and from what I can remember, it's telling the story of Judas as if Judas was in on the game. Like Jesus was like, look, Judas, I know you ain't gonna like this. The people ain't gonna like you for doing it. But this is what I need you to do. I need you to turn me over to the Romans. So, it is what it is, bro. That's your mission. That's your purpose. Uh, I think it's just fan fiction. People back in the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century wanted to know more about this Judas character because what type of person would overthrow this Jesus? So I think it just became fan fiction. And, how could a disciple on the flip side, how could a disciple do that to Jesus? There had to be something else to it. So I think it was just fan fiction of writing more gospel so people can understand more about an individual person. In the same way, you had one mentioning of Enoch And then they wrote the 5 books of Enoch because people were like, who is this guy that walked with God? So I don't think much of it since I don't think that Jesus existed. Uh, do you think he withheld because he knew people in the town wasn't ready to learn about everything he preached in a way that they would relate and understand? But he left clues for us to find. For instance, the Judas and the Dead Sea Scrolls, etc. Again, the Jesus character never existed, the one in the Bible. As far as these other books, all these other things were written based on people's belief in a Jesus character that was created by the Romans. Now, for some of the Dead Sea Scrolls, these were just people, the Nazarenes, who were followers of the Old Testament, of the Jewish faith, and they just a sect of Judaism. And so they had their writings as well that were offshoots of the Orthodox Jews. Understand, no religion has like everybody's just one thing. It's always splintered off groups. But as far as the great question is, as far as people our understanding or their understanding and just writing things or teaching people based on their understanding, that would be like teaching people like their children. Uh, there are certain things that it doesn't matter what age, time frame that we're talking about. Let's, for instance, if we're talking about treating women equally, when is man is always ready for that. It makes no sense to not teach man that. God should have been teaching man that from the very beginning. To own no slaves, God should have been teaching that from the very beginning. There was nothing to hide. Oh, we got to let you go do bad first, but then we correct it. No, that's not how it works. When you have a child, you try to teach them good from day one, right? So, but this God is like, no, as cultures change, then I'm going to adapt you to a higher morality and a higher understanding. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Man could understand no slavery at any time frame. Man could understand treating women equally at all time frames. Man can understand not making animal sacrifices or human sacrifices at all time frames. If we can understand not to murder, not to commit adultery, not to steal, not to do all these other things, why could not man have understood those other aspects? Man could have. And if you wanted man to understand more mystic things like alchemy or the Hermetics, actually back then would have been a better time frame to teach it than now because of science. But the difference is with science, we can measure and identify many of the things in alchemy. Like we can measure and identify vibration. We can measure and identify the different parts of the polarity on the pole, the negative energy and that sort of thing. But it would have been just as well to teach it back then. And they taught it back then, so why not teach it now? But you couldn't teach no slavery, no killing of animals for your blood atonements and all this sorts of thing. Nah. We're just looking at that through our own lenses of seeing our morality today compared to their morality back then, and how we live in our culture today, how they live in their culture back then. And that's all it is to it. So you have a great day. Hope I answered your questions well enough. Always remember you got to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibration.